Michael Kubba, today you're the Chief Operating Officer at Fellow here in San Francisco. Leading up to that, you've had an illustrious career in both operations and engineering, an academic background as a mechanical engineer. There's many different fields of engineering out there. What was it about mechanical engineering that ultimately drew you in?
Yeah, I think since I was a kid, I've always been a tinker, always mechanically inclined, breaking things, building things, putting them back together. Um, and I found that mechanical engineering, although it's not totally unique to mechanical, I found that it was just a really broad field. I could do everything from designing products in the consumer field to biomedical, to aerospace, to automotive. And luckily, I've been able to jump into those uh, various industries throughout my career.
Did you always know you wanted to go into more of a hardware design, or did you kind of want to leave it pretty vague going into college?
Yeah, I wanted to leave it pretty vague, and my college was very focused on aerospace engineering, and so that was pretty much what my focus was on. When I left college, it's pretty much all I had in my mind. I didn't even know about product design and product design engineering until I moved over to Apple and kind of really embraced what product engineering is all about. So it's kind of evolved over time, but it started in the aerospace world.
Gotcha. Cool. So, in your career, you've had the opportunity to work in diverse roles for some big names in Silicon Valley, including Apple, Tesla, and Google, which you mentioned. You've mentioned in the past that your time at Apple was instrumental in teaching you about product development. If you had to sum up what you learned at Apple in one sentence, what would that be?
It's a really hard one. I'm probably going to cheat here and say two different things that I learned. One is I learned the importance of design and focusing on the user with intuition. Um, I will expand on that and just say there's a lot of companies that are really data driven, which I think is really important. But I learned at Apple how to use common sense and intuition to design products that are really great for users. Secondly, I learned the intricate details of the product development process and got to do various jobs across all of the roles and responsibilities in the product development process, and that set the foundation for me for every job I've had since.
After Apple, you moved on to Tesla, where you worked on the Model S. You said before that it was in part Tesla's vertical integration and flexibility that made it so rewarding to work there. How can smaller companies learn from that model and create a similar environment when they don't have the resources of a Tesla or a Google?
Yeah, it's a good question. So one of the most amazing things about Tesla was that um, we had the test facilities, we had the production line, and we had the design engineering all in one building. And so there would be days where, or I would say every day, but there'd be hours where I'd be upstairs working on some design, changing some CAD, go downstairs to the production line, make a change, build something, and then head down to the test facilities to test it all out. And that process just sped up the development so much. And I think that obviously smaller companies are not going to have the means to develop full labs and production lines in their facility. However, I think that prototyping has become so democratized now where you can prototype things in a matter of days for fairly inexpensive costs, anything from 3D printing to CNC machining. Um, and you can set up a mini production line with just a few benches at your office. Um, and then you don't need a test lab in-house. There's many test labs and resources like that you can find that can be an extension of your company. And so at the previous startup that I was at, this is exactly how we operated. We tried to move fast and we made quick prototypes. We built them in-house, and then we would drive them over to the test labs and learn. And that was really, really powerful for us to move quickly.
It's really cool to hear. And so your time at Google was very different, where you relied upon to bring hardware development expertise to a software-focused company. What was that experience like?
Yeah, that experience was unlike any other experience I had in my career. For context, I joined very early on in Google's hardware life, I would say. Now they're pretty defined in how they're doing hardware with Pixel and stuff like that. But when I joined in a group called Google X, which is now just X. Um, it was about 80 people. I think it grew to 1,000 or more. And so this group of folks were technologists, academics, and software engineers. And so they didn't really understand the hardware development process. So a lot of the beginning of my time there was educating people on the product development process and how we should set this up and how we should focus on product definition and product ideation. Because I was working on things like Google Glass and some wearables and things like that that are not just a second generation, they're kind of totally new. And so there's a lot of learnings there. I will say that the good, the silver lining there was that it is kind of nice to challenge all of your assumptions every once in a while. We all have assumptions around how long things are going to take, or we have assumptions around how costly things will be. And I think it's really important every once in a while to challenge those assumptions. And that can be healthy. That tension can be healthy. But at the end of the day, my experience there was really about educating and building a new product development process within a kind of like a startup within Google. But it was also a really rewarding time to explore technologies and use cases that were totally new. And that was really exciting. And there was no playbook for that. There's no process for that necessarily. And now it's really cool 10 years later to see a lot of the concepts that we came up with that we thought would be really compelling features for Glass are starting to come out through the latest innovations with AI. So I think we were just a little ahead of our time there.
It's really cool to hear that you're pretty much just one of the pioneers for where we are today. Did you kind of expect to have a little bit of that pressure going into working with Google?
I expected some of it. And in fact, I had an opportunity to go into two different groups. One was the Chrome group, which was working on Chromebooks. And there was a couple ex-Apple folks that were there that I highly respected and wanted to work with. But then I was also interviewing with the Google X group, and kind of the nebulous nature, the working on something new, being totally undefined, that was really attractive to me. So I kind of knew that it was going to be, really, really tough. And I just didn't realize how the scale and the pace that we wanted to move, but it was an exciting time nonetheless.
So looking back at your time between these three really big companies that you've worked for, what skills did you find were most important to your success?
I think that the underlying skills or themes through all my jobs have been, number one, hard work, two, resilience, and I think three, the eagerness or ability to learn really quickly, to try to become a subject matter expert quite quickly. And especially early on in my career at Apple, I'm the first to admit that I kind of didn't know what I was doing. So I had to leverage resilience and hard work a lot more. As I got older and more experienced, I would say through the experience at Apple and Tesla, I would say the last skill that I kind of absorbed or grew is just my system level thinking. So really being able to have empathy for other teams because I've in many cases done their jobs in some form. And so having empathy for other teams, having thinking about what's next because I've seen it all the way through. And so that system level thinking is something that I've taken with me and served me well in my subsequent jobs.
Would you attribute some of these soft skills to your engineering background, or would it more so be the teams that you've worked with?
I think a lot of it came from the teams that I worked with, and especially at Apple. Now it's very different, but we're talking 2008, 2010 Apple. The teams that I was working on were very, very small. I was working on Apple TV and Apple Remote, single engineer, and very little resources for quality or program management or operations. And so I got this like great experience to dive in and do all of those jobs, or not completely, but more than I would have typically at a larger company. I just got this unique experience to do that. And I think through that process, and then being thrown in other situations where I had to kind of figure it out, that's what really helped me kind of understand the implications of what I'm going to do. It's not going to just affect the user, it's going to affect my teammate who's on the operations line, who's, if I'm delayed by a month, that's 1 month less that my teammate has. Or if I'm going to design something, I can design it really cool, but the manufacturing engineering team or the quality engineering team, they're stuck with how to measure this stuff, or they're stuck with how to, design fixtures. And so the ability for myself to just dive in and design fixtures and look at the quality of all of these things, it just made me have a different level of understanding of what those folks are going through and the impacts of what my designs are going to, have. And I think that's really what has kind of led to that system level thinking.
It's really great to hear. So moving on, a core mission of Oceanside Perspective is to share experiences across generations. As a leader at Fellow, how important are those intergenerational conversations between your team members?
I think it's really important. I think that, I have people on my team that, have been through many, many product development cycles. And I have some folks that are pretty new to this. And I think the questions that each person has for each other and how each side pushes is really healthy and I think important. I would say that in general, I feel like this is lacking at all small companies. And I think that's why I'm so excited about Oceanside Perspective in our push to kind of foster more of these intergenerational conversations and communities. So it's important for me, but I'd like to see this become more core to how companies run and interact.
You mentioned that you see it kind of lacks in the smaller companies. Have you seen intergenerational conversations be kind of emphasized for the larger companies you've worked for? And can you attribute that to some of the success that they've had?
I think so. I mean, I don't know that there's been an active kind of focus on it, but in my experience in these larger companies, you have a wide array of people, different demographics, different age groups. You have subject matter experts that have been in a field for 30 years or more. And so those types of things in larger companies, there's just more people, there's more specialties, there's more speciality. So what I find is you find more of those conversations of like subject matter experts that have been in the field for 30 years and somebody who's just coming out of school. And smaller companies, they tend to attract folks that are, generalists or eager to grow and learn. And definitely you need subject matter experts as well. But, they're just smaller companies, more lean. And so I've just seen it, a little bit more at the larger companies, just by them being larger and more specialty focused.
By joining Oceanside Perspective's board of directors, you'll play a significant role in helping guide the organization towards its new future. Why did you decide to make this commitment to OP?
I mean, I think for a couple of reasons. I think the main one being that, I'm at a stage where I really want to find ways to share my knowledge with everyone, with folks, to help build a community where these intergenerational conversations can start to happen. In my commitment and friendship to Helen, who has grown this organization and built this organization, I was lucky enough to be one of the speakers at one of her classes at UCSD, and I saw the impact that had on the folks there and the students there. And I just believe that what we're building at OP can really serve a huge audience that is maybe not getting some of these voices out there and some of these conversations started.
What value do you believe Oceanside Perspective offers that makes it unique?
Well, as I mentioned, I think there's a lot of content out there in various forms. But I think focusing on, the focus on leadership, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship, the community aspect of what we're trying to build, mentorship, and the intergenerational community, I think are unique aspects to OP that really I haven't seen in other places.
Do you have a long-term vision for OP? And if so, what direction would you like to see it follow for the next 5 years or so?
I mean, I think this is what we're trying to build out, and this is going to evolve over the years. But in 5 years, I'd love to see a thriving community of people that are interested in entrepreneurship or leadership, combined with folks who have been in the industry for a really long time, who can, mentor and add value. I would like to see a kind of rich series of content for people to consume in an easy way, where they can learn about not only people's paths and case studies, but also specific information in classes and courses designed for them to grow in their journey, whether along any one of these: leadership, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. So I'd love to see a rich content and a thriving community that's diverse. I think that's where we want to take this over the next 5 years.
So you've mentioned our tenets, leadership, innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship. Which of these four resonates most strongly with you? And what is an example of how it's come up in your life?
Yeah, I struggle with this one because all of them have come up in my life. I feel like, but I think the leadership one is probably that most strongly resonates with me. And I think through my experience and through the past years, for whatever reason, I've gotten pulled into leadership roles, and it's something that I'm feel called to do. But it also feels like something that I'm just scratching the surface on what it means to be a leader. So I feel like there's something there that's pulls me in, but also in various scenarios, whether it be at work or in kind of extracurricular activities. But it's also something that I know I'm deeply like I'm at the early stages of this and want to learn more. And I think that's the cool part of kind of just growing is continuing to learn and but recognizing maybe the talents and the gifts that you have.
Really cool to hear. So, as we conclude this interview, what advice do you have for aspiring leaders, innovators, and entrepreneurs who may be facing failure or adversity early on in their careers?
This might sound a little harsh, but I would say, hopefully it's encouraging. Like I would say, embrace this. And I would maybe try to reframe it that this failure and adversity is actually part of the process. It has to be part of the process. If you're not facing failure or adversity, then you're probably not pushing hard enough, or you're probably not have a goal set high enough. And so I actually think that this is something to be embraced, something that builds character, something that's just part of the process. And if you can think about it that way, it's less daunting about like, okay, this is not happening. I'm trying so hard. It's actually every single leader, innovator, entrepreneur has faced this and continues to face this, especially in entrepreneurship. Building companies is not easy. Keeping startups going is not easy. And so this is part of the process. And if you can reframe that and embrace it a little bit, I think it can actually be empowering as opposed to daunting.
It's really cool to hear. I understand that the risk involved with that may be a little high for people. So is there anything you could say that kind of would motivate them to take that risk or take that leap of faith?
Yeah, I think just one thing that I've kind of learned is that most decisions are reversible. Most decisions aren't existential. And so you have the freedom to try different things. And it's up to you how long you want to try those things for. But whatever the case is, you're going to learn. You're gonna take something of that experience. So the pressure may seem high, but you can take those baby steps and explore certain things. And if it doesn't work out, you can go back to the drawing board. Most I say most, not all decisions, especially early on in your career, are reversible, and you can try different things. And that's I think especially for somebody who's coming out of school, I think it's an amazing opportunity to try these things, to try, building a company. And what's the worst thing that can happen? You try this, it doesn't work out, but you gain so many skills that you bring to your next role.
It's really profound to hear. Well, thank you so much for your time, Kuba. You've been really awesome, and we really look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be a part of OP, and excited where we're going to take this over the next few years.